So you've sort of answered, I guess, the demand of the future occupier, the now, way back then, in terms of having sort of buildings repurposed. It sounds as if, although this was a large-scale development, it probably wouldn't have fared too badly if we were to bring embodied carbon as a thing which we very much talk about now into this context. Are you able to sort of talk a little bit about, in achieving what you have, how the sort of repurposing of the development and how materials were kind of sourced, and maybe just to give some indication around that embodied carbon element?
You've just entered a time warp because we as a practice, and I've been very interested in embodied energy since the early 90s when we started. We started with a project called Oxo Tower Wharf where the thinking was actually it would be cheaper to knock it down and simpler to knock it down, but we and our client at that time, Coin Street Community, decided to keep it. So we repurposed that building, and it's still going very, very strongly with a very interesting set of mixed uses. So that was the sort of hallmark of our approach then. And I wrote or edited an extremely boring book about embodied energy a few years ago, which started to question the idea of knocking things down and whether it might actually be better, both from an energy point of view, but also from an interest point of view, to keep whatever we can. And that's become much more, I think, mainstream now. So particularly at Hanover, the new Bond Street elevations, there's 6 restored frontages and 1 new one. We managed to save those, although Crossrail was digging underneath and we had to demolish the buildings. We saved the frontages. So the materials, the wonderful stone and brick and carvings, was all saved, and curiously enough have a wonderful effect in shading the buildings, because there's so much detail on the windows and so on that as the sun moves around to the west, those existing facades that we saved shade the buildings. And you're probably aware the western sun is quite pernicious because it's low and it's strong. So that was a good outcome. And then grade 2-star building called number 20 Hanover Square next to the station, which we saved. We knocked down the back of it, which was a later Victorian addition, and created a little public space. But that building is 300 years old. It was built in 1720 by Nicholas Wyatt. And I think we prepared it. We put a lift in and loos and services. We prepared it for at least another year. So, that's a really good example of embodied energy being saved and repurposed. And we thought it was going to be an office building, but in the event it was occupied by the Jimmy Choo Academy, and it's now a fashion school with sewing machines in these wonderful 2-star listed rooms. So some good things, and then above the station we had to have a new building. There was just no way we could avoid that, but that building is quite nimble, we think, and quite flexible.